you do not have to have everything figured out, but you do still have to have somewhat of a plan, correct?
Well, I laughed because I did not have a plan. So
No, okay.
I did not have a plan. So basically what I did was,
Hey everyone, welcome to the S.O.B Marketing Podcast, where we celebrate the S.O.B that you are, and if you haven't figured it out yet, we mean small-owned business. We don't mean S.O.B.
Listen, we know that as a small business owner, you are working hard on the daily to keep your business fully operational while trying to promote it. And while some days it may feel like the business is owning you, if we're being honest with each other, I bet you would admit that you wouldn't give up the insanity for anything.
Our commitment here at the S.O.B Marketing Podcast is to give you the real talk, what works when it comes to advertising, marketing, promoting your business, and then what doesn't really work.
And Chelsea and I promise to always keep the conversation real.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the S.O.B Marketing Podcast. S.O.B as in small-owned business. I promise we're not calling you guys names. Thank you for listening. If you are not subscribed on our YouTube channel, go do that now. If you're listening, if you're watching on YouTube and maybe you don't want to see our faces anymore, that's fine, whatever. We are on all of the streaming services, so you can just listen to us instead. We have a great episode for you guys this week. Vivian, what is our topic?
So we are very happy to have a special guest with us today to be able to talk about the transition from taking a side hustle or side business or an idea into a full-time business. And there is nobody better to talk about this than Michelle over at the Vision Balm. Is it now photography, or is it photography and videography, or just Vision Balm?
it's just Vision Balm.
So Michelle, could you maybe just give us like a short little synopsis and a couple sentences about Vision Balm, your brand, and what your business is now?
Yeah, so we are a photography and videography company just for businesses. And we do a lot, we do a mixture of product photography, headshots, lifestyle photos for businesses to market themselves online or in person. So a lot of people, when I tell them I'm a photographer, a lot of people are like, oh, do you do weddings? And I'm like, no, I don't do weddings. I just work with businesses. I don't know why people think that that's like the first thing that comes to their head, but yeah, I always feel like I have to like defend myself and be like, no, I don't do weddings. Yeah, the businesses.
You're like, unless you're marrying two products.
Exactly. Unless you're marrying two products that I can photo and video.
Okay, excellent. And so Michelle is going to tell us a little bit about her story. And then also we're just going to be talking about what that transition looks like and how to kind of get out of your head. Because I think a lot of times that mindset is what trips us up. So Michelle, we wanted to say first and foremost, Chelsea and I both have personally, we went in and we got our professional photos taken by Michelle in her studio. It was amazing, super comfortable. She walks you through the entire thing and the photos came out really, really good. And we still use them to this day for a lot of the stuff that you'll see on social media and YouTube and all that. So, Michelle, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your story? Were you always a photographer?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I always listen to your podcast and it's a really big honor to be on here as a guest. So photography was never something that I really envisioned myself doing. Like growing up, I knew that I always wanted to do something creative, but I didn't exactly know what that was. Like I went between being a hairdresser to like being a painter, doing something with art. And so photography was never on the wish list or the dream. But I actually ended up going to school for civil engineering and got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering and worked as an engineer for several years, got my professional license and everything. And even though I was, I had a good career path, everything was going great, I still wasn't really happy. So I decided, this was in my mid to late 20s, I decided I needed something more creative, whether that was going to be, continuing my engineering career and doing something on the side to get my brain kind of more in that creative mode, or completely pivoting from engineering to, something else.
I think this is fascinating to me because what strikes me is so many of us, and for one, we're all women here today on this podcast, but the one thing that always, sometimes when you're going to school and you have such a vision of what you want to do or in your life for a career, like you said, you went into civil engineering. Engineering is like the farthest thing, I would think, maybe not, from photography, right? So you have something that's very analytical, very numbers, structures, all that stuff. And then you have what people consider to be something that's super artistic. Did you find, how did you happen upon photography while you were kind of going through that?
So my best friend is a wedding photographer, and I got to witness, she actually took, so funny story, she took my headshots at the engineering firm that I was working at. That's how I met her.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then her and I became really good friends, and I was telling her about how I was struggling, with my career, and I didn't really know what to do. And she said, well, have you ever considered photography? I noticed that, you take really nice pictures with your phone. I used to go out to the Ravenel Bridge in Mount Pleasant and take sunset pictures on my phone, and I would do this all the time. And she's like, it seems like you have a good knack for photography, even though you don't have a professional camera, maybe you should consider it. And when she told me that, I was like, my first reaction was like, photography, like, there's no way I can make a living off of that. How am I going to make money? And then I was like, well, she does it full time and she's making a good living. So why can't I do that? So that's kind of where the idea came from. And then after I thought about it for a little bit, I was like, maybe I'll purchase a camera and just see how things go. So that's where it all started. It was just kind of like brought up by a friend, and I took the chance on it, and then it turned into something that I was not expecting at all, because I thought it was just going to be like a hobby, I guess.
Yeah. It's I love that friends or other people in our lives sometimes can see things in us that we don't necessarily see because we are too close to it. We're not far enough removed. But I remember when, before I started doing videos, the reason I launched the Season Marketer was we had a gentleman at a groundbreaking event, and he was asking me something about the press packets I'd put together to give the news stations. And there was just something about that whole interaction that he's like, oh, well, this is great. And you're thinking, I do this day in and day out, and I don't think anything of it. But then when you see that someone else sees value in something small that you're doing, you're like, oh, well, maybe I do know something valuable, or maybe I can teach this or something like that. So I love that it was someone else that kind of said, hey, by the way, your pictures, even on a phone, are pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like, I'm just doing this to, go out and have fun and post on Instagram. Because at the time, Instagram was like still in that phase of just, taking a photo, putting a filter on it. And there was no like video or stories or anything. So yeah, she's like, well, I guess when she said that, I was like, well, if a photographer sees something in me, then I guess maybe it's something I should consider. So those friends are the ones you learn to keep closest to you.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really striking too that, this is now your career, like your full-time job. You didn't start out that way. And I want to say for people out there who are thinking, oh, I can never be a small business owner. Oh, this is a lot of work, or this is really just a hobby of mine. Go ahead and keep doing that hobby.
So a few things on that end too. I always wonder how long there's this big identity thing that happens. And we love putting ourselves in boxes. I don't know why we do this, right? We always say, don't label me. And then we're the first ones to go and label ourselves. So for you, because you were going from in your life, you were an engineer. And I'm just going to say that's impressive. period, end of story. I don't care if you're male or female. It's impressive that you can build structures, do those things, do civil engineering, layouts, all that stuff. So, which by the way, our daddy is actually a civil engineer. He was in the Air Force, but yeah, he's a civil engineer professionally.
I remember you telling me that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is that you go from that, and I'd imagine too, because I also know that you have your family's ethnic, correct?
Yes, my mom is from Turkey and my dad's Italian.
So I'd imagine there's also a lot of pride that comes with like, wow, my daughter's an engineer. She's got her profession. She's settled in it. You went to school for it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to step out and to say like, this just doesn't feel right. And you don't know until you know, right? So like you're working in it day in and day out, and you're like, there's something there that's missing for me. And I don't know what it is. And so how do you feel? How long did it take for you to build up that courage to say like, hey, I think I'm going to start dabbling in this because I'm missing something in my professional career. It's just not fulfilling me the way I thought it was going to.
Oh my gosh, you really spoke to something this is something I've talked about for a while. The identity crisis is such a real thing. And like you were saying, my parents were so proud to have a daughter who was an engineer. They're still proud of me, but they took a lot of pride in that. And I had an identity crisis where like from like when I was like in college until my mid to late 20s, I was like, I'm an engineer. Like, that's who I am. That's my identity. I didn't really think outside of that box, like you were saying. And for me to just like completely like push that aside and do something else, I didn't even know who I was anymore. It was just the weirdest thing. And this happened for like a couple years, even after I started doing photography. And there were a few things I did to like help with that. But I think for me to like being an engineer, for me to get to the point where I felt somewhat comfortable switching to something else, I really had to get, and I don't want to go too deep here, but I had to get to a low point mentally to like actually make the switch. I never used to have the Sunday scaries, as they call it, until I was in my mid-20s. And I remember like it being Sunday and just dreading like the next day to come along. Like I just did not want to go to work. I had so much anxiety, and I just was not in like the mental space to like want to be able to like put an effort at work and succeed.
Yeah.
And I just remember spending my entire Sunday. My Sunday is just like miserable and in anticipation of the next week, So I realized like there's no way that I want to, because of that, I was like, I can't live my life like this for the rest of my life. I don't want to just live for the weekends. I want to enjoy my weeks. Like I want to be a human and, not dread every single day. So.
I completely understand that. And I've been very open on this podcast and just with our community in general. I went through the same thing. I was in the corporate world doing healthcare marketing, and I would have the Sunday scaries. I would wake up and I'd be so anxious about the week ahead, dreading it. Just, I don't want to go to work. And that was really tough for me too, because I love marketing and I love what I do. It just wasn't the right environment for me, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I've always had anxiety, but how intense my anxiety got while I was working that job was just not okay. And it was not good for my well-being. I had to take a step back and say, look, like my body is telling me there is something wrong. I need to do something else. And then Vivian brought me on, and now I love what I do. But that your body will tell you that you are not doing what you need to be doing in your life.
I'm going to remind you that you like working here every single time. When you send me a text, I'm going to be like, you like it here. You love it here. Remember? But and not to spread, like you said, we won't get down in the dumps about it, but I do think that people, they need to hear this because they are certainly not alone in this journey. And it's a very, there's this weird concept out there. I don't know where we picked this up, that like everything, once you kind of get the career you want, like everything just kind of, it's going to be great. You're going to love doing day-to-day stuff. And sometimes, let's be real, we'll spend our time going, getting educated and getting prepared for a job we end up hating. And, sometimes, and it's not for lack of like, it's not, sometimes it is environment, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just you thought it was different. My dad, and he told me this one time and it always stuck with me. I wanted to go into international law. And I was like, I thought I was being smart about it. I was like, great, I'll work for a lawyer. Well, I ended up going while I was in college and working in downtown Columbia for a bankruptcy lawyer. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with the law. After that job, I was like, and my dad told me, he's like, you went and worked for the wrong lawyer. He's like, if you wanted to do international law, what are you doing working in bankruptcy law? Like that has nothing to do with that. And so I do think, for various reasons, sometimes we could find ourselves in weird spots. And Chelsea, not to spread your business out there like a good big sister, but to the point, I remember Chelsea calling me one day and she had gone to see her family medicine doc. And she's like, he just flat out told me, he's like, maybe get a new job. Like if it's affecting your health to this point, then maybe you just need to do something about it and remove yourself from that situation. And so I do think that's where, Michelle, you have done, and I know, like you said, it's easy for us to look at you, Michelle, and be like, oh, this transition happened just beautifully. Like, she's super smart. She's an engineer. She figured out, she started dabbling in photography, and then she figured out how to make that a full-time business. But the thing is, it's never this beautiful arch. It's always these little dips, right? Peaks and valleys. What was the transition? Because I know you had just posted a reel talking about your transition and how you do credit your boss, who at the time when you had enough courage to speak up at a review and you told them like, hey, I'm just not, I'm wanting to maybe, I have other interests. And he gave you an opportunity to be a marketing manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, he really took a chance on me. And I remember telling my now husband, boyfriend at the time, what I was going to say in my review. And he's like, are you crazy? Don't say you don't want to be an engineer anymore. They're going to fire you. And maybe, another firm would have done that. I don't know. But I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I have to be honest with him. So yeah, that was like, I remember he took me out to lunch to do my review. And I remember sitting in the restaurant and I was like sweating and like shaking like crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope he can't see me. I'm like so nervous. And he was just like, so, how are things going here? How do you like it? And I said to him, I was like, look, I like working here, but I don't know if I see myself being an engineer anymore. And I don't know what to do. And he was like, well, actually, at first he was like surprised. And he's like, well, what do you think you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. Human resources, marketing, like, I just want to try something different. And he was like, we actually have a need for someone to take marketing on full time, because at the time they were a really small firm. And they didn't have anyone dedicated to like doing business development, marketing. They were all engineers pretty much. So he was like, we need someone to take that on. And he's like, how would you feel about that? And I was like, what? Really? You want me to do that? I was like, yes, of course. Like I have no experience in any of those things, but yeah, so I was super grateful to him for giving me that experience and that opportunity. I learned so much during that role at that company. And also, funny thing, they had me, even though I had no experience with a camera. This is probably around kind of the same time when I was maybe a couple months afterwards, when I first started this position, I was like, I talked to my friend and she's like, consider photography. And so then I didn't even tell the company this, but they were like, can you take headshots for us? Can you take headshots of our staff? Like we bought a camera for you. And I was like, oh my God, okay, sure. Why not?
That's
Yeah.
called the what is it? The universe sending you multiple signals. It's
Yeah.
like photos,
Yeah.
anybody?
It was so weird. And oh my God, I still have those pictures. And I look at those pictures and I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Like these photos are so embarrassing. I can't believe they were okay with me doing this, but I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah, it was interesting how things unfolded there. But yeah.
I think as the other flip side of this, not just we're having a good conversation about how, how that transition happens, but I think as small business owners, if you guys have people that are working for you, this right here, I think when they talk about hiring talent, you're not sometimes you're hiring for skill set, but sometimes you also recognize that there is skill set and growth that can come with them doing another position. And so I think that's so important because I have people that that work for me. I would give them any job, because I'm like, they're smart, they know what they're doing, very capable. And so it's nice that he had enough trust in you to say, hey, she's a valuable employee, and it's important for her to enjoy what she's doing and not just what we hired her for initially. So that was a wonderful thing for him to do as a boss, right?
Yeah, he was a good boss. And the CEO of the company was great too, because, he had to obviously throw this idea to the CEO and be like, should we, present this idea to him? And the CEO agreed. So there was good leadership at that company, and I will forever be grateful to them. But, not everyone's like that. Not everyone is willing to give people different opportunities. So, I'm glad you spoke on that. If you are a boss, I think it is important for, you to consider, if you have other people working for you, maybe consider giving them another chance to do something else. You never know what will happen.
So I do want to ask, I know right now as we're talking, you're saying that you kind of fell into photography, but when it came to actually sitting down and saying, you know what, I'm going to make this my full-time career, what process did you go through?
It was.
I know
like
that
a
was
lot
a
of
very
them.
loaded question. I know that was a very loaded question. I think the point I want to make is you do not have to have everything figured out, but you do still have to have somewhat of a plan, correct?
Well, I laughed because I did not have a plan. So
No. Okay.
I did not have a plan. So basically what I did was I was in this new marketing role. I want to say for 8 months-ish. And then I decided, and then I had purchased my camera and I was doing more of the hobby photography. So I was taking photos for friends. I was doing landscape photography. I was doing all of this after work. And then I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a chance and just quit my job. So, and there was part of me felt extremely guilty for quitting because I was like, my boss just gave me this opportunity and now I'm going to tell him I'm leaving. And so I was like, I felt so guilty about that. And I was debating whether or not to do it. But at the end of the day, I just felt like there was something in me where I was like, I need to go off on my own. I need to go off on my own. So I gave my 2 weeks notice and I had no backup plan. I was just like, I hadn't even come up with a name for my business. I hadn't even established an LLC. I was just like, I'm leaving. So I just quit my job and I had no plan. And then after I had quit my job, I was like, all right, now I need to start doing things. What am I doing? I remember I quit my job the next day. It was summertime. The next day I went to the beach and I brought a notebook with me And I was like, all right, what's my business name going to be? So I was like brainstorming on the beach, like trying to figure out my business name. And then I was trying to figure out like what type of photography am I doing? So I really had no plan, and I had no source of income. I had money saved up, but I guess I kind of figured that things would fall into place. And like luck was on my side, but I soon figured out that was not the case, and I actually needed to like work at trying to get my name out there because no one knew about me, right? So it was just kind of messy.
Yeah.
So
you know what though? I love that you own that though, because here's the thing: is we when we're recounting how history went, we glamorize it, right? Like we're always like, yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing, but it all worked out. I like how you're like, no. I didn't have a plan, and I realized I probably should have had a plan. But hindsight's 2020, and I do think that I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I love business books, and I love hearing stories of people that I'm obsessed with people that start companies from zero and then just like grow them, right? What they don't like, I think in your head, you're thinking, I just need 10 seconds of really, being courageous, and then everything else, I'll be rewarded for it.
yeah.
But sometimes that reward doesn't come for years and years later.
Yeah, I remember I reached out to a few photographers in the area. At the time, I was living in Boston, and I had reached out to a few photographers in the area, and I was like, "Hey, can I shadow you?" Or like, can you hire me part-time? Because I just wanted to like see what it was like. And this was after I quit my job and everything. And I expected, I guess, like once I started like shadowing them or like working part-time, that success would come to me. I don't know what I was thinking. I just figured, if I made one step, like everything would fall into place. But I soon realized
How old were you, may I ask?
I was 27. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, this sounds completely normal to me. Makes sense. Most of my friends would also do this. Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's because you're not thinking about like healthcare and, mortgages. And it's the mindset's very different. But I think that's wonderful, because the thing is, no matter what, Michelle, even though you didn't have a plan, when you realized afterwards where you're like, maybe it was a little premature because I didn't have this other stuff lined up, but you still worked with it. Like you're like, okay, this is the situation I'm in now. What am I going to do to get to where I want to be, right?
Yeah, and I want to be super transparent and realistic with all of this. So once I like took my 1 or 2 months of not being employed, and things weren't getting to where they wanted to be, I was like, all right, I need to find a part-time job to like at least get myself through this while I figure it out. So I did end up going back to a part-time role as an engineer. And at first I was like super resistant to that, because I was like, what am I doing? I said I didn't want to be an engineer anymore, and like, what, I'm going back into it. Like,
yeah,
I felt like a failure. But at the same time, I got lucky again. So I moved to Charleston, and I was able to find a company in Charleston who let me work 3 days a week. And with that, I could still schedule photo shoots the other 4 days. And also as an engineer, I was making pretty good money. So even though I was working part-time, I was still able to like fund my business, because photography is expensive. So I was like, I figured that out soon. I was like, I can't do this. I need income coming in. And in the meantime, while I figure this out, it's okay for me to have a job. And I'm lucky to find a job that's like, 3 days a week, and I'm able to like afford things still. So
I love that you did not get hung up on any part of that, because had it been, I think a lot of us do get so hung up on things that kind of like you're saying, you're like, oh, but I just left. Why am I going to go back? Even though in your head, I mean, you're going back for a very specific reason. You're not going back into a full-time role. You're going back to part-time, and it's a means, to you eventually doing what you want to do full-time. But like you said, you have bills to pay. Photography isn't cheap. It's, and you have to build. Any photographer, I think, worth their salt will tell you that you have to build that portfolio first and those relationships so that people keep coming back to you for other projects.
Yeah, that was another thing I realized. I didn't have a portfolio. So how was I going to, I told everyone on social media, I'm pursuing photography right now, but then I realized I didn't have a website. I didn't have a portfolio. I didn't have anything to back any of this up. So I figured the most practical thing, because I have an engineer mind, I was like, the most practical thing to do is to go back part-time and, work it out so that eventually I can leave. And then once I get to a place where I'm comfortable, I can leave and do this full time. So that took from when I started my part-time job, I left, I think 2 years later, when I took the business full time. So it was a journey.
Yeah. I want to say, if there's one thing that someone takes away from this episode, it should be that you have to give yourself time, right? Like, none of this stuff is going to happen overnight. You quit your job and then realize, whoa, wait, I need to actually figure out and build a portfolio and build my business and build all of this stuff so that I can give myself the chance. Like, you have to give yourself time. It took you 2 years, but now, you're doing great.
I think the other thing is social media has done this really big disservice to people out there, where if you think about it, small business owners back in the day when they didn't have social media, you really didn't know what to compare yourself to. You were doing your own thing, and that was just, the people that were in your circle or that you knew of, or if you saw them, advertising, you knew of them. But social media has built this like fake environment where a lot of people, it's a highlight reel. Everybody knows that. They're the highlights, the milestones, but yet we somehow compare our progress to other people's progress. And I know I've said this before, Chelsea, probably a million times, but I don't understand how people are comfortable comparing themselves to others online. Like, hey, her business is way further ahead than mine is, and I've been grinding for so many years, without knowing what the background or the parameters are. Some people come from money. They have access to capital that would allow them to quit a job, and maybe dad says, hey, I'll fund you for a year, I'll pay your bills. Then some of us don't come from those environments. And so, we have to make the decisions to say, well, if I have bills to pay and I have to look out for my household, how am I going to go about doing that while still growing a vision that I have in my head of what I want to do? And so I think, Michelle, it is amazing. And I love that you're so upfront about this, even on Instagram, where you're like, hey, it's like you said, it's messy. You said it earlier. It's not clean cut. It's not like, hey, I quit my engineering job and then I did full-time photography and here I am. It was a lot of other things in between there. But now I do want to say this, if it's unclear, Michelle is doing exactly what she wants to do now, full-time, with photography and videography now. And so I think the transition happened. It just didn't happen as quickly as you probably would have liked.
I am the most impatient person you will ever meet. So for me to be patient and to wait this out, I can't even tell you the number of times that I said, I think I'm just going to quit and just go be an engineer again because this isn't working out. There were so many times where I was like, why am I still not at the place I want to be? And you're totally right. Social media, although I love social media and it has been so great, and it's, I've met so many great people and I've gotten clients through it. There's this dark side to it where I was always finding myself comparing. And it's funny because there was a photographer I was following for a really long time, and I was like, wow, she has it all together. Seems like she's working full time. She's so successful. I wish I could be her. I met her in person and I learned that she still had a full-time job. And she was not making enough money to sustain her photography business. And that just blew my mind because she portrayed herself online as someone who was doing this full time and everything was working out. And then, I learned that piece of information and I'm like, I mean, I felt better about my situation, but then I was like, why am I basing my worth off of someone else anyways to begin with? I don't know. It's so hard. It is so hard with social media.
I do want to say with social media, there are businesses who are actively trying to stop that, right? Like, you are very transparent about your journey and very transparent about things being messy. I know the Design Demon, one of her reels earlier was about how she was dealing with seasonal depression, but now she's back. I feel like we are moving and changing in the social media like stratosphere into being more open and more transparent, because we all recognize that this isn't working for us. Like, we can't have polished feeds and be comparing ourselves to everyone. So people are being more transparent and showing who they really are. So I feel like we're finally getting to a place where, hopefully, in a dream world, we would no longer compare ourselves to other businesses. Will that actually happen? No, probably not. I mean, we are all human, right? We're all still going to compare ourselves to people, but just like being very cognizant of, hey, this is what's happening. I need to calm down. I don't know what's going on with them. I just need to stay in my own lane and work on being the best me, you know?
And to be fair, there's also, because YouTube community is kind of the same, but also a little, it's a little different.
Mm.
To be fair to everyone that is on social media, take Reels, for example, great. You get 90 seconds. Like, what, I cannot fit my entire story in 90 seconds, right? And so I think that's where there's a responsibility there when we're using these platforms, where we just have to know, like, we can share and be as transparent as we can with the information. But, for us, when we're scrolling, you're never going to see, you don't know what happens inside people's homes, even outside social media, right? Like, when you meet someone in person, you don't know what they're dealing with in their household. And so that's the part where I do think I've always had a pretty good, I think it's a little bit of like I've been like this since I was a kid. Like, I see things that I like in other people, but I never want to be other people. That's why I always tell everyone, I'm like, just rest assured, I have a very healthy dose of, self confidence. I'm fine in that area.
That's a good thing.
I'll one up you.
Yeah.
I'll one up you. I almost didn't go into marketing because I was like, I can't do that. Vivian does that. I can't be my sister. Then I took a marketing class and I was like, oh, darn it. Like, this is what I actually really want to do. Great.
Like, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Michelle, in the same vein that Chelsea was talking about with the transparency thing, one of the things that you had mentioned, which I loved that you said this, the start of your journey wasn't necessarily with photography, but you said you were looking for freedom. And that, for me, I was like, so many people can relate. And I'm glad that we're in a place now where we can be honest about that, to say, you could pay me all the money in the world. I want a certain lifestyle. I don't want to feel like all I do is work, work, work. I want to have like a good, happy life and flexibility to do what I want. So how did that kind of come into your mindset, that you realized you're like, oh, I need something that makes me feel like I'm free to do what I want?
So I had a few friends who worked for themselves and had their own businesses. And when I was doing my 9-to-5 job, I saw how they were able to just like take a lunch break and go downtown on a random Tuesday, or like, I just saw their schedules, and, they could do basically whatever they wanted as long as they got their work done. They had that freedom. And I didn't realize how important freedom was to me until I actually until COVID happened, I think. And I started doing my part-time job at home, and being able to be home and, not have to commute, being able to walk my dog in the morning, like having breakfast, like taking my time, but still working and making an income. That was when I was like, I really value freedom. Like, I feel less stressed. I feel less anxiety. Even though I was only working 3 days a week at that job, I was still like being home and like having the flexibility to like go to a doctor's appointment during lunch because it's closer to where I live than where it would be if I had to go to work. Like experiencing that, I was like, okay, I really think that I need more freedom in my life, and I need to be my own boss.
I think there are two groups of people. There are the group of people who do really well with, they need their time scheduled and filled, right? So they need to have that regimen. And then there are people probably like us who, part of the reason we love being small business owners is because of that flexibility. But also there's this weird thing where on top of it, it requires an insane amount of discipline because nobody is, no one's coming to you, Michelle, and being like, Michelle, did you happen to, reach out to, you're having to do all that on your own. So it's like this nice balance. And I've seen where you talk about people being multidimensional. So I think that kind of plays into it, right? You have this personality where you need the flexibility, but yet you have an insane amount of discipline that has allowed you to build a community and build a business.
I feel like if I did not have that like type A personality, type of engineer like thought process, I probably would not have been successful in my business because I feel like I've seen so many people like do their own thing, but then I don't want to say they fail, but they just don't get to where they want to be. And then they go back to what they were doing, which is fine. And I had those moments again, but I feel like a lot of people don't understand that when you actually start working for yourself, you really do need to you need to have structure in some sort of capacity. That looks different for everyone. I still structure my work days, Monday to Friday, like 9 to 5. That's when I'm working. But because for me, I can't get any work done at night. Like I'm just not a night. Like I know myself, and I know I'm most productive in the morning, like afternoon. Okay, but I still structure my work day so that it kind of falls into that 9 to 5 because I know that's when I'll get my work done. That's when I'm most productive. And, if I need to go out and do something, I will because I can. But yeah, having the discipline is so important, and that looks different for everyone. But if you're someone who's like not structured, I feel like the best way, and maybe you could probably speak more on this, but I feel like the best way to like help with that is to have someone hold you accountable or be a part of a community where you can like get work done and like hold each other accountable, I guess.
I think it's helped me that because Chelsea and I are in two very different spectrums of like
I'm so glad that you're saying it because I didn't want to say it. Go ahead.
I mean, I knew you were going to say it, so I just beat you to the punch. But the thing is, because I'm still working a full-time job, and so I have where I have to do things either in the morning or in the evening. So I still feel like I'm very much like working a lot of the time. But with Chelsea now on board, it's allowed me to not have to do that as much as I was before because she has taken on the entire responsibility for like the social media and stuff like that. That still means though that Chelsea will text me and be like, on Monday, I need this, and this from you, bullet point, right? Or this is the stuff we have on the docket or whatnot. And so it does help, I think, when you have someone that holds you accountable for that. The other thing is, I know, and Michelle, you probably have some form of this because you've built a pretty good following on social media and stuff. And I think there's also the thing where it's like, I need to have a schedule. If I want to show up to start building a community consistently, I need to try to put some form of a schedule together on me being able to drip out information. So for example, I know when you were launching your videography part of it, that's a new service line for you, right? You said, hey, video is where it's at these days. I know how to use my camera really well. I work with brands. I'm able to do videos for brands, and then now I can do them for other small businesses. And so in order for you to launch that, I'd imagine you had to be pretty clear about what your like launch campaign was going to be and what that was going to look like before you actually rolled it out to your email list or whatever else.
Yeah, I had to think about that for a little bit. I was really resistant to offering video. I don't know why. For a while, I was really resistant to it. I think just being a photographer and being stubborn, like, oh, what about photos? Like, video's becoming popular. This is stupid. You know what I mean? So I had to think about that for a little bit and figure out how I wanted to do it.
Which is so funny because your videos are fabulous. I don't know why. Like, I would have never guessed that, because even when you started doing your first like reels, they look good.
Thank you. You're so kind to say that. Yeah, I don't know. So when I started learning video, I kept it a secret. Like, I was like, I didn't want anyone to know about it. I don't know what. Yeah, it was weird. So I didn't want anyone to know that I was learning video. And then finally I was like, you know what? I need to announce this in a way that I don't even know. I think what I ended up doing was, and I don't know if you remember this, I posted like one of the videos that I created. It was like a spoof kind of video with my husband featured in there, and it was supposed to be funny.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't really show this side of myself too much, but I'm like super goofy. And so I was like, you know what? I just want to like put something out there that'll make people laugh. And I feel like this will be a good way to get people's attention, because if it'll make them laugh, then they'll remember it. And it's not going to be just like a regular, oh, I offer video now. Like, I really wanted people to remember this and to know like, hey, she is doing video. Like, this is cool. So, I didn't really have a strategy for that. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of like ruminating about it for a little bit, and then decided that I wanted to present it in a way that was different than what I normally do. I guess maybe that was my strategy, being different about it. Trying to approach it in a different way.
It worked though, because I think that's the whole thing, especially with because they had known you for so long on just doing the photograph thing. I think from the outside looking in, I mean, it's, it was, for me, it was on brand for you, because I'm like, she does the high-end, nice-looking product photos. You do headshots, lifestyle. And actually, didn't you also did stuff for 𝘸𝘱𝘬𝘦𝘵, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I shot product photos for her. Yeah.
Okay, so we help her out with some of the emails, and I love having them. Yeah, in the
awesome.
Dropbox, being able to like download them and like use them on there. But it's great because you do such a wide range of different stuff, whether it's the lifestyle stuff or the videos. But from the outside looking in, it seemed like it was right on par for what your brand does. So it's interesting to hear you say that you had to sit on it for a while and just kind of think about whether or not you wanted to venture into it. But then again, Chelsea and I, we have some clients that we work with, and client work is always a little weird. I'm just going to be honest. Like, it's always, you're managing expectations. You have people that a lot of times say, I don't look good on camera. I don't like the way I look. And you're having to figure out how to best, like, put something that represents them really well together. So I could see where you're like, do I want to go into the editing and videography?
It was just like it's very different from photo, believe it or not, because you have to learn new software. And you actually, you edit your YouTube videos, so like what's involved in video. So it's just different from photos, and I just didn't want to like learn all of that. But the reason I started offering it was because one of the companies that I do product photos for on like a regular basis asked me if I offered video, and I was like, no, I don't offer video. And then it clicked. I was in my head, and I realized like, okay, if I offer video to them, this could go in a really good direction, because they're a really great client and they'll probably need video for a while. So I was like, maybe I should offer it. And then at the same time that they asked me about that, I saw this woman who was offering a videography course, and I was like, it's meant to be. Like, again, the universe is like, okay, you have to do this type of thing. So I don't know.
I like though how the way the universe does it isn't like, hey, we're gonna nudge you a little. It like flat out has to come out with like a illuminated sign for Michelle that says, Michelle, come this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always like that, but it was like those two moments, the first one that I talked about, and now like the video thing. So Yeah, it was just kind of crazy. But I look back and I'm really happy that I offer that now because people need video. It's like really important.
I do want to say I love that you had that experience with a client asking for video because, like Vivian said earlier, this the day we're recording is the day that our Design Demon episode was released. So with Ray, we had a great conversation, and something that she brought up is she started offering her charm bar specifically because she kept having customers ask basically like, can I customize my earrings? So she went, you know what? I'll create a charm bar so you can just build your own earrings. So this is two great examples of if you listen to your community, if you're listening to what your consumer wants, they will lead you in the direction of success.
Chelsea, I love how amped up you get about stuff. Like she's like, listen to your community. But I will say,
well, I just want to say, I think it's so like sometimes we make things so difficult for ourselves, but if we actually take a second and pay attention to what's going on, like we can figure this out.
Yeah. And there's, I do want to take the time right now then to remind you guys to go onto Michelle's Instagram so that you could see exactly what we're talking about with some of these reels, and you can see in person what it is. But Michelle, the cool thing is I feel like because you are always, like Chelsea said, you're taking that feedback, you have built a really good presence and like a conversation with the audience that you're building. I think that's the hardest part. And Chelsea and I still struggle with it, where it's the engagement and kind of just massaging that conversation. But I've seen where over the years, you're probably doing a couple different things to do that. I've seen that you show up on stories quite a bit, and you also give them a little sneak peek. Like you've done a lot of traveling in the last like year, and you show yourself, you take video and you upload it on stories to show people where you're at and what you're seeing. And then you've also shared your Turkish background with them, and then some of the recipes, right, that you have with your mom. And so I feel like you've slowly it's become more of like a, you know me as your photographer and videographer, but let me give you a peek into who I really am day to day, because I think you have a personality like so many of us, where we showing up initially as ourselves is probably like, what's this going to be like? And then you just kind of, you're doing it and you do it every day. And I don't know, people seem to really resonate with it.
I really appreciate hearing that feedback because sometimes I think I get in my own head a little bit and I'm like, am I doing this social media thing the quote unquote right way? Instagram has evolved so much since I first started my business in 2019. And I used to be really hesitant to like share the personal side because my account is, a business account. And I know sometimes business owners, they have like the business account and then they have a personal Instagram. So I don't have a personal Instagram. I just, have the business account. And so I'm like, do people really want to know what's going on? And I've actually, interestingly enough, the posts and stories that focus more on like the personal stuff gets more engagement than the photography, like the professional, like photography and videography. I think people just want to know you're a human just like them. So, you're relatable. At the beginning of my Instagram journey, I was like posting consistently. I was showing up every single day because I wanted to build an audience and I wanted to just get my name out there. I think recently I've kind of changed that and I'm not as consistent anymore. And that, like, when it comes to social media, I'm not as consistent. I've like kind of pivoted in a different direction in terms of marketing. But so even though it's like I'm not as like active as I used to be, I still find the social media community to be a really great way to like spread awareness about yourself if you're starting your business, because everyone's spending their time online now. So
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, it's almost, what is that thing they used to tell you to do when you were checking like which way the wind was blowing, to lick your finger and like stick it out there, right? I feel like that's how we all are with Instagram, because they change every other week on what's, the right way. Chelsea and I were just talking about this before you hopped on. Keywords. Are keywords relevant? Are they not? Like what? So, I think
Hashtags.
Hashtag, sorry, Chelsea.
Sorry. Yeah.
If you're a small business owner and you've had that thought that Michelle just had, which is, am I still doing it right? Or is this even working for me? Or, am I in the right direction? I think there's a 1-question quiz that you can take. And it's basically, is it funneling sales to your business? And if the answer is yes, then it's still working, right? Because it's going to change so much week to week, month to month, year to year. So I do think that as long as it has a payoff, that makes financial sense for, the amount of time you're spending on there, then it works. But I do know that that's one thing hopefully we'll get the hang of eventually, and I do think I see it more now that Chelsea's showing up in stories too, because Chelsea's got more of the personality where it's like, hey, let me tell you what I'm doing, where I'm like, hi, I'm back again. So I do think, like you said, they just want to see the, sorry, my chickens are going crazy outside. They do want to see the real life version of what you're doing. And that leads to everything we've talked about today, your transparency on all of these issues.
Yeah, I just want to say that I really enjoy, Chelsea, your stories. You are hilarious. Like, there are some things that you say that I'm like, wow, I love it so much. You keep it real.
I will say, thank you. I will say sometimes I do struggle with, I do have a very strong personality, and I know that. And sometimes I'm like, okay, where do I need to kind of maybe simmer down a little bit? Like, am I being too much right now?
Don't simmer down,
or
please.
Like sharing with, don't.
No,
okay.
I love it.
Like, I was sharing my good. I was sharing my garden, and I was like, well, do people really care? Or I had said, Tim and I are very serious gardeners. Oh, well, wait a second. No, we're not serious. We've just invested a lot of money. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes finding the right amount of personality can be a little bit difficult for me, but it's a learning experience.
Well, and I think that's where, though, the kind of like with you and Michelle, when you do share these parts, it's like what people don't understand. It's a muscle, just like anything else, right? Like, you have to exercise it. And this is the one thing that always kind of strikes me is, when I was reflecting back on like my YouTube journey and the first video I posted, which, Michelle, I can relate 120%. When you see that first video, you're just like, oh, what? Like, I cannot believe what was I thinking? Like, yeah, that looks good to me. Let me publish. Let me put it on the interwebs because it's so great. But so the thing is, though, had I stopped at year 1 or year 2 or year 3, like, you just can't, you're constantly growing. And I think the thing is, you get way more comfortable with yourself with showing up whenever you do just say, hey, I have a purpose. There's a reason to this madness, and that's what I'm doing. But Chelsea, I'm okay with your level of spiciness.
Thank you. I will say, if you think that's fun, you should see my personal account.
Yeah, her personal account's unhinged.
Oh my God.
It's a lot of cats, though.
It is a lot of cats. It's a lot of cats and a lot of metal music. So
yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you listened to metal music and you had cats. See, these are things that I feel like people would be interested in. I don't know. And I've talked about this with people so many times. Like, they're like, how much should I share? And I'm no expert by any means on like social media, but I always hear people saying like, oh, no one's going to care that I made a turkey sandwich for lunch, or like, no, I don't know. No one's going to care. Like, my life is boring. And I'm like, well, we all kind of have boring lives, but I think at the end of the day, people just want to know that you're relatable. And the relatability is the thing that builds like the like, trust. What is it? Like, trust, know factor.
Know, like, and trust.
Know, like, and trust. So yeah, the relatability definitely builds the trust. And I don't know, we're all just kind of humans figuring everything out. No one is like perfect, you know?
There is for that person that says, I don't know that they're going to be interested in my turkey sandwich. There's a lady called Mama Tot. Have you seen Mama Tot on TikTok?
No.
Okay, she's got an insane following. I'm almost sure that she's over 1 million, but her entire thing started with her, like, her whole account is she would go and during her lunch, she would take a paper plate, bring her lunch outside, and she'd be like, hey, darling, like talking to the camera, have you had lunch yet? Let's sit down and talk about a couple things. And then she would go into, like, you know, just like, hey, if you're feeling down in the dumps about this. So it was a little bit of like an inspirational thing. This is her whole account. She is now a full-time content creator off of eating in front of a camera and, you know, and just kind of belling up and giving them the opportunity to exchange like whatever's going on. But I think Michelle, it's interesting because I think you're so it's not modest. What's the word I'm looking for, Chelsea?
Humble.
Yeah. She's also my thesaurus. So you're so humble about, you know, everything you've kind of built. And I do, like, you guys seriously go look at her Instagram account, Vision Balm. You're going to see these reels it's amazing. The stuff, my favorite ones that you do, Michelle, are the ones where you're showing us the behind the scenes of product photography. Because I'm like, I would have never thought that's what's required to get a shot like that.
So it's funny you say that because I had a client come to my studio last week and we shot her product. And it's a product that you like fit on your wrist, and I had to take a white background photo of it, but it needed to like be in that shape. And we were having a hard time getting it to be in that shape. So I was using random household objects. Like I ended up using a glass cup from my kitchen to like wrap the band around to like take a picture. And I said to her, I was like, yep, this is basically what I do, like for product photography. Like there's no like method to it. I just kind of figure it out. And she's like, wow, I didn't even realize that you literally sometimes you just need to work with what you got. And part of me was like embarrassed to kind of admit that at first, because I'm like, oh, she's not going to think I'm a professional, like using like a glass cup to like fit the band around. But then I was like, you know what? Like this is literally what we have to do. Sometimes we have to figure it out. We have to engineer it. We have to, you know, brainstorm. So yeah, it's the product photography stuff is really interesting, and it's very, very different from like taking pictures of humans, because products don't care what they look like.
Cooperate.
Yeah.
Humans are fun to photograph, but everyone has their insecurities, and I totally get it. And you know, just product photography is just in itself so different with like lighting and like composition and everything. So the two things are just very different, but I enjoy them both and navigating both worlds.
Is there any one product that just has really stood out to you over the years that you're like, that was a fun one?
Oh my gosh. You know, I have fun with all of them. I have gotten into a lot of like laboratory and scientific equipment recently, which feels like kind of a full circle in my engineering career.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had to photograph, this was a few months ago, I had to photograph this like surgical device, and the client gave me, it attaches to an IV cord, and like an IV sitting on, I forget the technical name to it, but
on a pole.
Yes. So I had to photograph the IV hanging on the pole connected to this surgical product. And I was just like, that was interesting because I learned a few things about like the surgical, like surgery, I guess. He was like telling me some of these things. And I was like, wow, this is like a whole new world that I didn't even know about. And that was pretty interesting.
You just did you did a video recently, wasn't it? It wasn't a scooter. What was it?
Oh, it was an electric scooter stand. So it holds the electric scooter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That is awesome. I saw
that was interesting.
because were you using your house to like video all that, or were you at their place?
I was using my house, so the client came and the client was modeling. But yeah, it was in my house. We originally were going to rent like an Airbnb, but it didn't work out. So we ended up using my home, and I like didn't even know that they had stands for electric scooters. Like, this is what I'm saying. I learned so much in this job. It kind of like opens my eyes to new things. And yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's really interesting, the types of people I meet and like the products that I photograph. It's pretty cool.
Well, Michelle, it was wonderful having you on. I think this was a great conversation for us to have and for everyone to hear. You know, if you're feeling like you're not really meeting your full potential in your career, there is never like a time frame that you have to change careers. You can do it. No matter what age you are right now, you can change careers. Maybe even just adding on a hobby. Why are you laughing?
Maybe not if you're 90. I don't know, but
You
go
can
ahead.
change careers if you're 90.
Yeah, you could.
Why not?
Okay. As long as your little heart's still pumping, you can change careers.
I'm leaving this in.
I agree, Chelsea. Yes. And also I hope you guys see where it's never a straight point A to point B journey. There's a lot along the way. And if anything, you know, we hope that you guys will take from Michelle's story and feel encouraged that if you have to do a little step back every once in a while to reassess and then to move forward again, you know, certainly that's something we hope you will continue to do along the way.
Michelle, where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, www.visionbalm.com, VISIONBALM.com. And you can also email me, Michelle@visionbalm.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. It's all at Vision Balm is my handle.
Well, thank you once again, Michelle. And you open invitation. You could come whenever you want to talk about whatever else you would like. So if you know of any topics in the future that you guys want to have Michelle back for, definitely go check out all of her stuff, her website, her Instagram, and you'll see she's got a very unique and she does some cool stuff for her day-to-day profession. So go check that out. But just a friendly reminder, if you guys have not subscribed to this and you're watching this on the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that, or go ahead and hit that like button as well. This is streamed on Spotify and all the things podcast. So wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure that you're leaving us a review, and also feel free to share this episode with somebody who you know right now may be struggling to make that leap from side hustle to full-time business, or if they're just not feeling fulfilled in their day-to-day job. I think there are some key takeaways here that can definitely help. And if anything, just let them know like you're not alone. Everybody goes through this as a growing phase in their career. So thanks again for joining us, and
go be the best SOB you can be.